place to go. Grab a stab of rock with Mike and the Bad Metal Man. Grab a stack of rock and hold on tight as hard as you can. Keyboard's here, it's time for a party. Come and see, got the comment started. Grab a stack of rock with Mike and the Bad Metal Man. Grab a stack of rock and hold on tight as hard as you can. Grab a stack of rock with Mike and the Bad Metal Man. Grab a stack of rock and hold on tight as hard as you can. Grab a stack of rock. Grab a stack of rock.
Hey everyone, welcome to this very special episode of Grab a Stack of Rock, which was unplanned, but circumstances dictated that we need to do this tribute to Paul Di'Anno tonight. Please welcome, in his first appearance on Grab a Stack of Rock since January, it is my co-captain, Mr. Harrison Kopp, the Mad Metal Man, and we will talk more about your magnificent return very soon.
As usual, apologies for the lighting. I've been having trouble ever since I switched to a different laptop. So
now it gives you an aura of mystique.
Yes,
and speaking of aura of mystique, we have a surprise tonight. We have a special guest. We have Mr. Peter, the Professor Jones, joining us tonight.
Hello. Thanks. It's great to be here, Harrison. Pleasure, sir.
Thank you so much for doing this on... Oh, yes. You guys have never met. That's correct. Yes. Harrison.
No, not officially.
I will tell you that this man here is probably the most knowledgeable guy when it comes to live concert Iron Maiden stuff. And we will get into all of that tonight. But without further ado, I would also like to introduce to you the man who's been co-hosting with me for the last 3 weeks in a row. Wait a minute. That's not Johnny Klauser. That's Paul Di'Anno and Steve Harris. Oh, there's Johnny Metal. And last but certainly not least, the crazy madman himself, Metal Roger. And I love this layout. We have this wonderful banner made by Harrison, and we have Paul Di'Anno at the very center here in Lego form. For those who saw the artwork at the very beginning of the show, it featured 3 eras of Paul Di'Anno. The short black-haired one shrieking into his microphone, the later shaven head with goatee Paul Di'Anno, and then finally the wheelchair and glorious white beard Paul Di'Anno. With a war horse up in the corner, and Eddie over here, and maybe, Harrison, maybe you should start by explaining who Marshall Lockjaw is.
Marshall Lockjaw is the titular character of the song Marshall Lockjaw from Paul Di'Anno's solo. The band at the time he had was called Killers.
Yes.
Now, the visual inspiration for Marshall Lockjaw in the liner notes there's actually a couple of additional illustrations. This one here, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it. You're going to have to crank your brightness, unfortunately. This one here,
unfortunately. Yeah.
Cyborg in a hat, red eyes, sunglasses, and somebody running to him. And then there's this illustration here. Of the sort of hat and that and the smoking body there. So that's who Marshall Lockjaw is. Great song, by the way, as well. One of the best from his solo career. Yeah, I'm in witness protection.
There we go. And thank you for joining. Yes, Killer's hoodie. And maybe I'll just say real quick that Harrison donated this shirt to the Grab a Stack of Rock archives in 2023, early 2023. And thank you for that. This is the Soundhouse tapes. Anyway, let's get started. Actually, you know what? I'm going to start us off with something for the physical media heads. Harrison, do you have your copy of Axe Attack handy?
I could run and grab it.
Okay, why don't we do that? And I will start then by getting Pete Jones to discuss what we've been talking about for the last hour or so, which is Harrison's going to show us, in my opinion, the rarest Paul Di'Anno related Maiden thing that there is, because I say that because I didn't know it existed until a month ago. There is a demo version of Running Free on this thing that he's about to show us. And Pete and I were going back and forth figuring out what lineup it is. And I will let you take it from there.
Well, yeah, it's, when you sent it over to me, the question was, is this pre-Iron Maiden album drummer Doug Sampson, or is it Clive Burr? And it took me, and if I'm wrong, I'll get hit by lightning, but I think I'm pretty safe. It took about 2.5 seconds to go, that's not Clive. It's Doug. And, further analysis, if you go to the BBC Archives stuff that's in the, Eddie's Archive box set, which is, really one of the great box sets by any band. The material on there is just fabulous. Talk about extras galore. They do the version of Running Free from, pardon me, from the BBC Radio 1 in November 14th of 79. And the intros are absolutely awesome. Because that's Doug, and with Tony Parsons on the other guitar, with Paul, Dave, and Mr. Harris.
So that was Tony Parsons on that.
Yeah. As far as
so that is confirmed. So Harrison, let's take a look at this Axe Attack record, and maybe you can tell me how you found out about this, because this is one thing that I never knew about.
Right, so this actually looks identical to your one. There's no difference between this first pressing and the later pressing you got. So what Axe Attack is, it's basically an LP compilation. Is it K-Tel? Yeah, it's a K-Tel compilation. So just a collection of metal songs. Now, this is from 1980, this particular one. There was an Axe Attack Volume 2 a bit later. And one of the songs on here is Iron Maiden Running Free. Now, it doesn't say it anywhere on this, but this is the first pressing which has an exclusive demo version of Running Free on there. Shortly after, for the second pressing and any subsequent ones, they replaced it with the studio version. But presumably at the time it wasn't ready, and so they had to give out this demo. And Running Free is an interesting song because it was quite muted on the original album in terms of the production. I mean, the band has been critical of the production, and Running Free was one of the songs that suffered. So I personally find that this demo, and as mentioned, a lot of the versions on the BBC archives, I find them to be far superior to the studio version. Now, this Axe Attack record is the only place you can get that demo so far.
Okay.
Oh, you asked about how I found it. Yeah. I was just so basically what happens is when I go to a Discog seller and I identify I want this album and this is why I'm here, I also do a bunch of other searches and stuff. And one of those standard searches is Iron Maiden. So I was just scrolling through and then I saw like various Axe Attack compilation, and I, opened it up in new tab. I'm all right, what's on here? And then suddenly I'm just reading, and then I get to the notes and it's just like, be 3 years of demo version of Running Free. I'm like, well, hang on a goddamn minute. What is this?
Right.
And then what it's turned out to be was an Iron Maiden song that Mike didn't have. So as you could imagine, I had my 5 seconds of gloating that I finally had a song that he didn't have. And then he went and bought one, but before I could warn him to specifically look out for the first pressing. So the funny thing was the very first time I bought Axe Attack 2, I got the second pressing, even though it was listed as the first one. So that's actually the second copy I bought. I have to keep them like separate. I'm going to have to put a label on the outer plastic. Otherwise, I'll end up mixing them up.
Excellent. Yeah, I still need that record, and I would like to have that record. Well, thanks, Harrison. And
call his
Pete,
broker.
Call his broker. Pete, you are, I would say, I would rank you as an Iron Maiden scholar here. And you've been posting some really cool videos of Di'Anno era Maiden. I just want to ask you, what was your entry point to Iron Maiden? Were you there when Di'Anno was the current lead singer?
I'm sorry. Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that part of it.
Yeah,
absolutely. My next door neighbor and I, Joe, he's my infamous music buddy. We got the debut within a week. that it was released.
Wow.
It never really went more than a week because we would try to go once a weekend to the record store. That was not a far bicycle ride. And we saw the album cover, and it's that classic story, and it looked cool, and the graphics were cool, and there's some cool concert shots on the back, and go, this can't suck. And it didn't. And
Wow.
that was the start of it. And, you know, it's, you know, those who are old enough to have been there from the very beginning, Paul has a very special place in our Iron Maiden history. And it will never be overshadowed, as brilliant and phenomenal as Bruce is. There's something there that's special, because I've always said this, that Bruce wouldn't really have had a band to join had Paul really been horrible and these records not done very well.
That's right.
You know, I'm not attributing it at all to Paul. Okay, the band was very good. Harris was exceptionally motivated. They had great players, but whatever. But what I'm saying is, you know, that foundation was laid there, and it was such a strong foundation that there's kind of a line for some people. It's Paul Maiden or Bruce, and then there's those who embrace all of them, but may have a leaning one way or the other. So, yeah, definitely from the very beginning.
I feel the exact same way. I liken it to a situation where you have, you know, a Dave era and a Sammy era, and you have, you know, other bands where you've got specific eras, and some fans embrace both. Some fans prefer the original or what have you. But Paul was so unique, even in the new wave of British heavy metal. He had a unique look with the short hair, but he had the punky approach, which was actually kind of, when you think about it, Steve Harris was not a punk fan at all. So for him to have this singer that had sort of a crossover potential was very interesting. And like you said, there would have been no band to join if not for that. It was the Paul lineup that got them the record deal with EMI, with Capitol.
Well, I think just my quick 2 cents is that, having heard these two records a gazillion times, I think the punk influence itself came most directly from kind of two people.
Okay.
Paul, again, his look and his approach, but I think the real source of it was Clive's drumming. And because Clive played with a very quick, I mean, I call it the Cobra. His right hand is just a blur. And most drummers, even Nico or anybody who plays any Maiden material, doesn't do that and changes the whole feel of the songs. So while Steve certainly doesn't embrace the punk label, you can't avoid that. And my last comment would be this. You know, a lot of people will categorize Paul's vocals as kind of gruff or punky. I would disagree. He can do that. But when you look at Remember Tomorrow, stuff he does in Phantom of the Opera, Strange World, the middle section of Charlotte the Harlot, Prodigal Son, he could sing. And he had a much higher range than people give him credit for. And he was wildly entertaining to watch, even if it was more minimalistic, certainly compared to the acrobats of Bruce. But I thought he was just wildly fascinating. And I think he gave them a certain amount of darkness. And of course, Bruce Hall is that, you know, if you expect me to wear all that leather and that frilly stuff, forget it, you know. And yet here we see him in Hammersmith and what he's got. Stud bands that go from the wrist almost to the elbow. You know, you're like, okay, you may have put up your stink a little bit, but you're not going to cut your hair. I get that. But Paul's influence remained in there for quite a while. So.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Pete actually just brought up something there I was going to bring up myself as well, and that's that I think history has downplayed how good of a singer Paul was because of the brilliance of Bruce. Like, you know, you mentioned Remember Tomorrow, but you also look at, you look at Remember Tomorrow, all the songs you mentioned. Yeah, he could absolutely sing that more delicate, that softer, clearer thing. Of course, he had that aggressive mid-range on songs like Wrathchild and, most of the songs. But the thing that people tend to forget a lot is, even though he didn't have the biggest range, he had some pipes on him because he could absolutely scream. You listen to like Killers, you listen to that scream in Wrathchild. Like, he had a scream that, could go toe-to-toe with Bruce. He had that shriek on him, even though he wasn't known for it. And even throughout his solo career, even to like 10 years ago, when he was like 55, he still had a very powerful scream on him.
Yes.
Which it's surprising given his punky influences. It's a very heavy metal thing, but that was one of the things that people tend to forget, is that he had a shriek on him. Bruce tends to overshadow him because of how brilliant Bruce is, but Paul Di'Anno was no slouch.
And the comments are unanimous, by the way, here. So thank you, Pete. That's I'm glad that you said all that stuff. And I listened to Iron Maiden all week, the earlier stuff, and then I threw a Number of the Beast just for some texture. But I got to agree with you. This week, more than ever before, I was really appreciating how Paul Di'Anno sang, and then also how he screamed. So thank you for I don't need to say anything. Mr. Johnny Metal, though. Mr. Johnny Metal. We originally had a different show planned this week, so then you and I decided let's do Di'Anno.
Right.
What was your reaction Monday morning?
Well, you were the one that broke the news to me. I hadn't seen it on social media, so I had just gone into the shower and just gotten out of the shower, and I come back and I get this I get the ding from you. I'm like, oh my gosh, what? Really? Soon as I got myself together, I did a short 5-6 minute video that put out to YouTube. I figured there'd be hundreds of them coming out by that point, but I'm like, everybody's got their story about what Paul and his era of Maiden meant to them. And maybe it was a little too quick. Maybe I should have waited a little bit, but we all have a story to tell. And I think we need to just get that out there. So, and yes.
Oh, look at that.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Got this, this was something I had picked up from, I think it was a Cart and Horses deal.
Cool.
Cart and Horses was a very big backer of Paul and him trying to get him back up to health again. And so they stood by, they got behind him and as well as his management and, the band he worked with. Yeah, they were very big for him. So good on Cart and Horses.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and as well, I have some footage and stuff that we're going to be watching a little bit later, but we'll be talking about the health stuff a little bit. Unfortunately, Paul was in a wheelchair at the end of his life there. He's been in a wheelchair for about, as far as I know, about 3 years. Yeah, but he was still performing, and he was performing
longer than that.
Longer than that.
Yeah, I think his manager was in an interview. If you go back and there's an interview with the Metal Voice, I think it was like almost 10 years he'd been in a wheelchair. But we can get more about that. But there's a long story that goes with that. I saw.
My emphasis on this is that he was performing really well. Like, if you see some of the footage, as much energy as he could put into those performances he was doing, and he was singing to the absolute best of his ability. So you got to give the guy credit for his work ethic towards the end of his life there. He was sadly, really kind of on a roll too, with a new album out, and people were just really excited about there it is. Look at that, Women in Uniform. That's Women in Uniform, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll be showing off some of my stuff a little bit later too, but yeah. Anyway, Metal Roger, thank you for joining us again tonight. You are seeing Iron Maiden tomorrow in Toronto.
I sure am.
And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, I think you're probably the most recent Maiden convertee here on the panel tonight. Do you have any Paul Di'Anno favorites that, we know what the set list is, but do you have any Paul Di'Anno favorites that you wish they would be playing?
Drifter.
Top
of my head.
I was talking to Johnny Metal earlier this week, and we were really appreciating that. yo 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 yo, the part that he does in the live concerts, and how I think Bruce did that a little bit when he was doing Drifter briefly, but it wasn't the same. Like
Beast over Hammersmith,
Yep.
the first
which is
time I
also
heard him
all the
do
lazy
that,
bastards from EMI are up the back.
the first time I heard him do that would have been on one of these singles that's included in this box set here.
Yep. Is that the 10 years?
Yes. So I'm not sure which single it was, but I'm thinking it was.
Or it was an early one. It would probably have been
Sanctuary?
probably
It
Sanctuary.
was. Yeah. Okay. So it was.
Yeah, it would be
one right
that one.
there.
Yeah.
That one right there. So that's
Yep.
the first time I ever heard Drifter with that yo 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 part. And I remember just being really impressed by this. I'd never heard anything quite like it before. It was immediately catchy. You immediately wanted to sing along, you know. Anyway, I hope that what song are they doing? Iron Maiden?
Yeah,
I
they
think they're
do
doing
Iron
Maiden
Maiden.
live.
I looked at the
I hope-
playlist.
I hope that you are satisfied by just being Iron Maiden.
I
tomorrow.
was gonna say Prowler too, because that was the first Iron Maiden song I've ever heard. And
Well, Prowler is one that they actually recorded with Bruce as well on one of the Seventh Son singles. I think it was The Evil That Men Do.
and here's
but-
something that'll blow your mind. I prefer the original version.
Um,
And really, I actually like the first two Iron Maiden CDs and all the Bruce stuff. And there's nothing wrong with Bruce. It's just the first two CDs to me were the perfect melding of
Yeah.
punk and metal, which
Yeah.
were my first two loves. So his voice to me, I compare it to Lemmy and Ozzy. Neither of them
Combined?
were great or are great, but what they sing fits what they're singing over perfectly.
Yeah, no, totally. And in fact, maybe we'll put it to the panel here, but I don't think very many Bruce versions have the same impact. Personal, yeah. See, everybody's shaking their heads no, except for Harrison. He's nodding in agreement.
I'm nodding in agreement.
So that's unanimous on the panel, basically. Although it was Bruce's version of "Running Free" that I heard first because it was the new single on the Live After Death album.
Live After
around
Death,
the time,
right?
Yeah,
Right.
right around the time I was getting into Maiden, and I heard Maiden Japan shortly thereafter. But aside from that, the Paul versions are the go-to versions for me.
Well,
There
for
we
me, Killers will always be my top ranked Maiden record. It's going to stay there for the rest of its life. And the thing about Bruce is you can look at it as a gradual stepping stone. When Bruce was doing the Paul era material on the Beast on the Road tour, those were way more acceptable to me because it still had Clive. And because it had Clive, the songs felt right. So everything else was the same, and Bruce could then do what Bruce does. As soon as they shifted to Peace of Mind and Clive was replaced by Nico, who, before he put anything crazy in the comments, I absolutely adore, but he's a completely different drummer. And those feels totally changed, and the combination of not having Paul and Clive made those songs from those first two records really hard for me, as great as Bruce is and as great as Nico is. They're really hard for me to listen to.
I agree. I
Now,
agree with that 100%.
For anybody who's watching who doesn't understand, Pete is a drummer, so he really, I mean, if anybody's going to appreciate the drumming on a record on this panel, it's Pete Jones. And I think from an objective perspective, whether how you feel personally or which drumming style you prefer, you can't deny there was a shift in drumming style and it changed the feel of the music. That's undeniable. That is objectively true. Anyway, I just want to take my turn on the panel to I want to turn the stage over to a friend of mine, Brian Richards, who was at the Iron Maiden concert earlier this week when Bruce Dickinson made his little tribute to Paul Di'Anno. So Brian was there. I'm going to play his video, and then I'm going to watch Bruce's statement. It was beautiful, and it deserves to be seen on the show here tonight. So that's what I'm going to do with my turn. First, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Richards. Now, this is a vertical video, so unfortunately, Harrison's going to disappear. So, Harrison, if you need to go take a break, now's the time. Here is Brian Richards, and he is in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he saw Iron Maiden the other night.
Hey, Mike, thanks for giving me the opportunity to sit in for a couple minutes on your show tonight and hopefully give you a little bit of context for the Bruce Dickinson video tribute to Paul Di'Anno from the St. Paul concert the other night. I was fortunate enough to have attended that show, and I had general admission floor tickets, so I was right down in the pit, right in front of Bruce and the rest of the band when he did that. It occurred during the Senjutsu portion of the set. They were introing the song The Time Machine, one of their new tracks, and Bruce was talking about, normally I'd tell a funny story here and whatnot, but tonight I don't want to be a downer for all the proceedings going on at all, but we need to mention our friend and bandmate Paul Di'Anno, who passed away the other day. You probably know about it. If you didn't, you know about it now. And he went on to just talk about how great of a band member and a friend Paul Di'Anno was to everybody in the band, and how influential he was in the early days of Maiden. And also he made mention of some of Paul's solo projects like Battle Zone and some of the other things that he did later in life, and really stressing the fact that rock and roll meant everything to Paul right up into his last days. And it was a very touching tribute. A lot of us in attendance were wondering if they'd say anything or what they would do. The song Iron Maiden is already in their set, so we thought that would be a natural place for it. So it was kind of a surprise when they did it before a Senjutsu song, but it really worked out well because Bruce talked about how he'd like to have a time machine right then, and it was just a very special moment. If you haven't seen the clip, it's gone viral on the internet, so you can find it there. Again, thanks for having me on tonight, guys. I appreciate it. Good luck with the show, and up the irons. Yes.
Up the irons. Thank you, Brian. And you don't have to go elsewhere on YouTube. Don't go elsewhere on YouTube. We're going to run that Bruce Dickinson bit right now. Here it is. I guess it was St. Paul. I said the wrong city. St. Paul, Minnesota. Here's Bruce Dickinson with his tribute to Paul Di'Anno.
I was watching Back to the Future last night on TV, and it's true. It is 1.21 gigawatts of power that you need to put a DeLorean through the portal of time itself. I normally tell a story about that. We have a bit of fun. But tonight is, I don't want to put a downer on the proceeding at all, because our friend, our band member, Paul Di'Anno, passed away, as you are probably aware. And if you're not aware of that fact, you are now. So, Paul was instrumental in the first two albums, groundbreaking with Killers and the first album, an amazing voice, devoted to rock and roll right up till the last minute of his life. So, would just like to give maybe, for those of you who were born and still remember those early albums, when obviously I wasn't in the band and he was, and those of you who were fans of the stuff he did with Battle Zone and his own projects afterwards, and for anybody else that fancies having a listen to the tracks like Remember Tomorrow and stuff like that, which are absolutely awesome. I'm just going to ask everybody to just take like a few seconds to just say, close your eyes in silence and say, just internally, mentally, if you believe in God, if you don't believe in God, it actually doesn't matter. Just believe in what you believe in and just say, thanks, boss, for doing what you did. So, Paul, if you're listening, this is a little message from Minneapolis to wherever you are, upstairs or downstairs, you're having fun. Minneapolis, for Paul Diano, scream for me! I can't fucking hear you, and he can't fucking hear you! We're gonna leave the time machine.
Oh, that was so well done. From funny to heartfelt to spiritual to Bruce in 3 minutes just said it all. And he's also said Minneapolis, so I don't know. I'm just gonna.
They're sister cities, so it's okay.
Okay. Anyway, that was absolutely lovely, and I was really glad that he said something, because Maiden are not the kind of band that really do things like alter their set lists or, you know, make statements. So for them to do that was really, really cool, and that was so beautiful. Anyway, Harrison, you are as I was telling Pete earlier, you are the expert, in my opinion, on all things live Iron Maiden. The Beat Club show that you are so fond of is no longer up on YouTube, I understand. But do you have any suggestions for those who need to check out some live Paul Diano? Give me some direction, my friend.
Just in Maiden or in general?
No, in general, across the board. Because I know you know.
Well, I'm going to start with Maiden. So obviously, BBC Archives, if you can get the set, or if you can just get it separately, yes. BBC Archives has some great stuff on it. Live at the Rainbow is the only official video live footage. That's an awesome show. It's an awesome 6 songs or 5 songs, however many they play. As mentioned, yes, the Beat Club 1981 performance. The broadcasted 5 or 6 songs is still on YouTube, but at one point Beat Club uploaded the full thing. It has since been taken down, unfortunately, but if that ever goes up again, or if you manage to find someone who's downloaded that show, give it a watch. It's a wonderful show, and there's some wonderful little behind the scenes tidbits between the songs that would usually get cut out of a video release. Now, if you can find it, there is this is basically a bootleg. It's a soundboard bootleg from the show either before or after the night that was recorded for Made in Japan. It's got 16 songs from the Japan shows, and then I've Got the Fire from the Marquee show. Fantastic show. Great to hear. It's more or less the full Made in Japan. I saw someone in the comments was asking for an expanded release. If you can find this, pick it up.
Harrison?
All right.
May I jump in for a second?
Absolutely.
One of the beauties of being home with kids for almost 19 years is you learn to hunt the internet and find every site you can find to find these bootlegs. I've got a run of the shows from Japan, and there is versions of the full 23rd out there, 18 tracks in all. And they really do sound great. And, it's really an era of the band that is just kind of almost never mentioned, and I think too, we have to talk about the other cover.
Yes, please.
With Paul's head.
I'm going to zoom in on you, Pete. I'm going to zoom in on you so we can see this up close.
There it is. And, which I think is absolutely classic. That's a great cover. And the combination of the tracks from the first 2 records, they really just dug in deep and filled up those set lists and played a lot of material.
They play Strange World. Like, when's the last time that happened?
Yeah. And it's an era of the band. The other one too is, if you get the Reading show from 80. Which is really great. You probably have that one handy there. Yeah. And of course that one's with Dennis. And Maiden was really good at I would say, testing out or kind of premiering songs from upcoming records that would show up in their set lists. You know, they were really good about that, and they would test them out and try them out, and then they would show up on the subsequent studio record. And so you're always getting surprises from them. And, you know, their set lists weren't nearly as cut and dry and formulated as they used to be. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, they play non-album track at the time. Twilight Zone, you know, there's a guitar solo from Dave Murray. There's a Mr. Clive Burr on drums gets a drum solo.
Yeah, Strange World is actually on the set from the 23rd.
Yeah. I'm such a physical media person that I just forgot that bootlegs like this are just on YouTube and just available on the internet. So this really isn't rare to find unless you want it physically.
Right.
Now, Mike has a Maiden bootleg. So before I go on to Paul's solo career,
Oh yes, I should show that, shouldn't I?
yes, I haven't heard this one, so you'll have to pitch in for this bit.
So, you know, who knows if the credits on the back are accurate half the time. This is called Another Live, and it's not that uncommon. I've seen it on shelves more than just the one time that I bought it. I also want to just, sorry, I was on another train of thought earlier because I just wanted to answer Henry's question here, which is, yeah, they did. They played I've Got the Fire by Montrose live, and Women in Uniform by Skyhooks as a cover.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, track list on this is Wrathchild, Purgatory, Sanctuary, Remember Tomorrow, Another Life, Twilight Zone, Strange World, Murders in the Rue Morgue, Iron Maiden, Transylvania, and Drifter.
Outstanding.
51 minutes. It says it's Kosai Nenkin Hall in Nagoya, Japan, May 23rd, 1981. But, you know, I never trust some random bootleg. They're just as frequently incorrect with, you know, even something as simple as the spelling of the names. But check out the inner cover here. It's hard to see, but it's Iron Maiden dressed up as samurai with Eddie, which I've always thought was cool. But yeah, that's my only Paul Di'Anno Iron Maiden bootleg that I own. Thanks for reminding me.
All right, so I'm going to move on to Paul's solo career now. Now, the very first thing he did in 1984, he basically formed a band by the name of Di'Anno, and they released an album. And then they went on to tour that album live. Now, of all his solo ventures, this first Di'Anno album is the most, and its subsequent tour is the most sort of like far removed from anything else that he ever did, because this album and the live performances, the songs on here are, you know, Paul Di'Anno was never pop, but this is as close he got to it. The songs are bright and peppy. And when he played live, so this is live from London. This is from 1984. It's the DVD is not from 1984. The performance is from 1984. And they play the whole album. They play no Maiden songs on this first tour. Paul made a big point of playing no Maiden songs on his first on his first solo tour. Apparently, according to history, this did not go down well with the audience. But if you're a fan of the Di'Anno era, the Di'Anno self-titled album era, I mean, this is a great DVD. They play the whole album. They play a then unreleased. Basically, Spiritual Guidance was Paul intros as a song that's going to be on their second album, but people are getting a preview of it. But that second album never materialized in that shape and form as it was told on this album. We'll probably get to that a bit later, which is a shame because Spiritual Guidance is a great song. He also does two covers on this. He does You Really Got Me. And the one that I really, really like is Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, the Animals tune. Now, Paul always had a very unique set of influences. We'll touch on that a bit later as well. What he's done here, and I really love this cover. It's like my favorite song on the whole album and one of my favorite covers he's ever done. He sped it up and the main riff is done as a guitar harmony. So it sounds phenomenal, this cover. And sort of like the last thing I'm going to say about this album, this is an Australian DVD issuing. So some record label over here was like, the Australians have got to hear this. And I love that. All right, so as I'm going on, because I'm doing this chronologically, I'll sort of run through some of the other solo ventures he did, even if they didn't have accompanying live stuff. So after Di'Anno folded, they never got that second album. He was in Gog Magog, which was a supergroup with Clive Burr, Neil Murray, Yannick Gers, and the fourth man.
I know.
Escapes me. But Paul was very they all did, or Gog Magog did, was released.
Clive Bird, did you say?
Yeah, I said Clive.
Okay.
Was released a 3-song EP called I Will Be There. Paul was very critical of his time in Gog Magog, in particular about the fact that the band members weren't actually allowed to write any material.
Right.
So that quickly went nowhere, fizzled out. And then, as Bruce mentioned, he came back with Battlezone in 1986. Now, Battlezone is the part of his career that I'm least familiar with. They released 2 albums, 86 and 87. They had a more hair metal appearance, judging by the album covers. I know we're not supposed to call it hair metal, but after Battlezone 1990, he and Dennis Stratton appeared with Praying Mantis, and Mike can has something to show for that.
Yeah,
a cool live album I don't have.
I actually, Johnny Metal is familiar with this album too, and I listened to it this week while talking to Johnny Metal, and I liked it more than I liked it then. Paul was in great voice. He was singing awesome on this thing.
His scream on Wrathchild is amazing.
Yes, it's top notch, and also just the flat out singing is top notch. But I think what I didn't like about this album the most is the bass playing. It's very difficult to play bass and make it sound right when you're playing Iron Maiden. And I'm sorry, and there's no credits, so I don't know who's playing bass, but whoever the bass player is, it kind of truthfully spoils the album for me. But check out the cover. It's 3 praying mantis eating Eddie.
There's another cover out there that's like a band shot on stage, but that one's a bit cool.
Yeah, I like that one.
I want to give credit to the artist on that cover that Mike's has. that's a Tommy Pons illustration. Tommy Pons, of course, known for doing the Dangerous Toys album covers and a lot of other stuff too. But yeah, I wanted to throw that in there too. But carry on.
Wicked. Yeah, carry on.
All right. So in 1992, Paul returned with Killers and Murder One.
Right.
Killers is probably sort of like the high point of his solo career. So spoiler alert, basically, the story of Paul's solo career, in short, was, unfortunately, it's a tragedy because he tried to do his own thing. I said Neil Murray, there's one other. Sorry, I don't mean to shoot you down like that. But anyway, so it's a tragedy because he tried to do his own thing, like, with that Diano thing and with other things and with Killers. But over the course of 3 decades, he was essentially pigeonholed and forced into playing pretty much exclusively Maiden in his live shows. And I think it's fair to say that took him out. That took a bit out of him, in terms of because we'll get to it live, but he sort of stopped caring at one point. And I mean, it's hard to blame, playing the same 15 songs for, 20, 30 years and, nobody wants to hear anything else sort of thing. So it's really unfortunate how his solo career turned out. But Killers is a very solid album. There's a bunch of great original songs on here. Listen to Impaler and Marshall Lockjaw if you want to get a feel for what the best of... Yeah, Pete Willis, that's the one. Thank you, mate. If you want Impaler and Marshall Lockjaw, if you want to get a feel for what the best of Paul's solo career, it's a lot more heavier and aggressive than Maiden is, particularly Killer's second album, Menace to Society. That was a step up. But Murder One also has 2 covers on it. One of them is Remember Tomorrow. It's a re-recording of the Maiden song. I think Remember Tomorrow was Paul's favorite Iron Maiden song because it appears a lot more than any other song. And the other one is a cover of... Actually, no. That cover's on the live stuff. So Killers had a live album called South American Assault. Now, one of the band members in an interview later went on to say that it was allegedly just recorded on the studio because in a studio because the tour fell through. So I don't have that. They cover We Will Rock You, Smoke on the Water. So it's got some unique covers on it. I haven't listened to it because it's not truly live. So then around the turn of the century, there was a lot of things going on. Like he reformed Battlezone for an album in 1998. Then he reformed Di'Anno in 2000 for a second album called Nomad, which was
right.
not the same as that second album that was shelved because Spiritual Guidance isn't on Nomad. He also had a couple of archive releases out. This one here is phenomenal. It's called The Beast Live, or if you're looking at the back cover, it's The Live Beast. This is archive recordings. There's 10 it's all covers, unfortunately, but they're phenomenal. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's great. 9 Iron Maiden songs and then Women in Uniform. The jury's still out, I think, as to whether the record label company guy who put this together knew that it was not a Maiden song or just shoved it on there anyway and thought it was a Maiden original. But, if you, for some reason, ever thought that the original Iron Maiden albums, 2 albums with Paul Di'Anno, just needed to be a bit heavier and more aggressive, this album has you. Paul's in phenomenal voice. He's a bit older in age. He's more aggressive, and that sort of suits this new take that he has on the songs. Killers also had a live album out around this time as well called Live at the Whiskey. It was recorded in 2000. I have heard bits of it. It sounds great. It's sort of the counterpart to this album because it's got more Killers songs on it. It's the same sort of performance, really aggressive and great. It's on the way in the mail to me. I bought it shortly before he passed. So unfortunately, I didn't have to show it off. So now the turn of this century is sort of where that downhill slide goes because he stopped sort of releasing original music and his set lists became more and more Maiden dominated. And there was an accompanying... I don't mean to speak ill of him, but he sort of put less effort into his singing. It's not that he was sloppy. It's more that he just didn't put the effort in as much to his singing. So we're going to go to 2003 DVD, The Beast in the East. It's a recording of a show in Poland from 2003. And you can sort of compare with each release. Like, this is still a great show. He still sounds great. He's singing pretty great here. But you can just sort of hear a very slight sort of, there's a lot of Maiden songs in the set. There's still stuff like Impaler, Marshall Lockjaw, and a cover that he covered a lot, which was The Faith Healer from the sensational Alex Harvey Band. He loved that song. He always he covered it a lot. So then, you go to Hell Over Waltrop. Once again, it's a good show, but it's just a little bit sloppier than the last one sort of thing. Like, they're still great shows. They're still very listenable, but this has a pretty similar set list of Impaler, Marshall Lockjaw, Faith Healer, a bunch of Maiden songs, and Blitzkrieg Bop, which he usually ends his sets with. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but you can sort of see this sort of downward slide as he just stopped caring a bit, and this culminated in 2015 with The Beast Arises, where people speculate he was drunk during the show. It's not a good look. It's not a great show. Sort of after The Beast Arises, he started putting in more effort to sort of like to the end of his life. He sort of turned it around a bit. But sort of Beast Arises is the nadir, and I don't want to focus on the negative too much. It's not the worst thing I've ever heard, but it's very clear at the time he didn't really care too much about it. It still has the only official live version of Purgatory you can get, so there is that. And then, sorry, were you going to say something, Mike?
No, just that's interesting. But then again, you're the guy who knows this stuff.
Yeah. As I said, it's a tragedy. It's unfortunate how he was essentially forced into performing all these Maiden songs because that's all people wanted to hear. I liked a lot of the stuff in his solo career. But, as I mentioned, he sort of turned it around a bit, and we get his first album of new material with this year, Paul Di'Anno's Warhorse. This is a very solid album. It's got a lot of original songs on it that are quite good, very solid. And there's a couple of covers on here too. The first is Tequila, which is mostly instrumental. But the one that I want to talk about more is Depeche Mode's Precious. I mentioned that Paul Di'Anno had a lot of unique influences. Like, he's covered Play That Funky Music. He did that really well, I think. And I think Precious is a really, really good cover, and it's a really good song. I think it's one of the highlights of that album. It's a bit more ballady. It's not as synth pop as Depeche Mode could be at times, but I think Johnny Klauser will agree with me. It's a great cover, and this is a great album. So he went out on a high note.
Another little Warhorse thing he did too. But
Oh, I wasn't. Oh, is that like an EP? I wasn't aware of that.
this is actually a DVD.
Oh, neat.
Signed.
Yeah, it's signed by him too. But yeah, I think this was something that was done to help him with his his health recovery kind of thing. But yeah, it's a DVD that's got "Stop the War" and "The Doubt Within," and then there's like some special video messages on here from him and the band. So.
Right, so the very last thing I'm going to cover. Sorry, I've been yapping for ages here, but his very latest release, The Book of the Beast. It's an anthology release. It's basically Paul's hand-picked the tracks. There's some rare stuff. It covers sort of every era, except I think that first Di'Anno self-titled. In my opinion, it runs more like, you remember when Judas Priest put out the box set, and then they put out that smaller one-disc version that had like a bunch of studio tracks, a bunch of live tracks, and the studio tracks were tracks that were handpicked by the band, not necessarily as like a greatest hits, but sort of like, this is who the band is. So it's sort of this album sort of runs more as like this is the stuff that Paul's really happy with and some of his favorite stuff, but it's not as much of a greatest hits, I think, because it's missing stuff like Impaler and Martial Lockjaw. I know I keep coming back to those two, but they're some of the best that his solo career had to offer, I think. It also comes with a bonus DVD of live stuff, and I'll just get up what's on here, because there is some cool stuff on here. There's the track listing. Sorry, it's here and not on the notes. I could go off the top of my head, but here we are. So there's some acoustic performances of some Maiden songs and one of his solo songs. There's some promotional videos for some of the singles he had out at the time. These videos actually aren't too good quality. They're a bit pixelated. Audio's fine. It's just pictures a bit iffy. There's an Italy 1995 performance of a song called 3 Words, which is a bit of a rarity. But for me, the sort of like real meat and the draw of this DVD is this pro shot, 4 songs from Hamburg 1994. Paul's phenomenal voice here. He sounds amazing. He's coming across really aggressive. The guitars and the rest of the instrumentation complement that really well. And he's putting in a killer performance. There's Murders in the Rue Morgue, The Beast Arises from Killer's first album, Protector from Killer's first album, and then Sanctuary. I really wish we could have got the rest of the set on this in this quality, and because it's a phenomenal performance. Like, I know I was going on a bit earlier about how he, turn of the century, stopped caring a bit, but when he was basically giving 100%, he was giving 200%. Basically.
Fantastic. Well,
so
I'm going
that
to
sort
be
of
playing...
rounds up my sort of, I guess, overview of his solo career. So,
thank you for that.
Go back to your original question. I do mention the live stuff basically, if you want to hear it.
What's that? Sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
Sorry, I was like, to answer your original question, I did sort of like basically.
Oh yes,
all the live stuff.
No, you did, and I thank you. I honestly didn't know that you had that much Di'Anno in your collection, so that's awesome. The only thing I wanted to add to what you said is when we come back to my turn, I'm going to be playing an interview with Paul's former guitar player, Steph Hond, and he echoes a lot of what you said about... Well, we'll get there. Yeah. Anyway.
Sorry, I just want to say one last thing about this Book of the Beast. There are 2 new recordings here. The only 2 Iron Maiden songs he has on this here are re-recordings. They're duets. So the first is Wrathchild with the Dragon Force singer. But the real cool one is Remember Tomorrow, a duet with Tony Martin.
Oh yes. That's cool. Tony Martin of Black Sabbath. As if
Tony's old, so I don't mean to be disrespectful. He's old, so he stays a little more to the lower register than he's famous for, but he still puts in a very good performance. I just want to say, don't expect him to be shrieking like Cat Martin used to in the 80s.
No, yes, we must be realistic. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, Harrison. Harrison, the master. There you go. But from the master to the professor, I want to again dial it back to 1982. So do you remember hearing about Paul Di'Anno leaving Iron Maiden, and do you remember what the vibe was in the metal community at the time when the word came out that Paul was being replaced?
Well, yeah. And here's the thing. Again, when you live something in real time, you don't have the ability to have the hindsight and the reflection and everything that we have now.
Of course.
Again, I've always said, well, I'll be much smarter tomorrow than I am today. And that's just a fact. That's just how things work. You don't know what is going to happen. You don't know how the outlook looks. You don't know if it's going to be successful or not. And when we discovered that he was out, and in most of us either saw it in an coming soon or a new release, for Number of the Beast or something, or most people found out when they bought Number of the Beast and realized that Paul's not on it. And that's how a lot of people found out that he was gone. Yes, you're concerned. You're invested in this band if you were like me and my friends. We're 2 albums in. We had Made in Japan. We loved this band. We don't want to see any changes. And when you hear, as I've said on another show, is that as soon as I heard the intro to Invaders, and the longboats have been sighted and the evidence of war has begun, I felt okay, because I thought the ship is in good hands. He's a great singer. The songs sound great. The band is on fire. But there's always a lamenting. What if? And I think one of the things we have to talk about here is that when somebody leaves, a lot of times the bands will say, well, with Clive, it was, Clive left because his playing became subpar and, we had to let him go because he wasn't consistent and everything else. Now, I haven't heard every show that Clive ever played, and I've got a lot of bootlegs. Clive was always pretty damn good. Now, again, I'm not in the inner workings. We don't know what that's like. And with Paul, was it his vocals or was it his perceived lack of direction or energy or focus? Was it health? We can speculate and go back and forth, and people have said things here and there. And then you get we wanted to be more creative and we wanted to go different directions. Paul couldn't have done that. To which I say, crap. And here's where the rubber meets the road. Here's the chicken and the egg. You get Bruce, and now Steve is the main writer. Do you write songs that accommodate the talent of the new person you have, or was he just going to keep writing and say Bruce fit in? Well, we can kind of answer that. And the same thing was true when Clive left. You've got Nico, and Bruce makes fun of it in the early days. You're like, oh, wait, he can do this, but he can also do this. Can you do this and do this while you do this? You can. They're having fun because he's a very prolific and very technically independent drummer. So the point is that if Bruce hadn't come in, they would have written what would have worked with Paul and Clive and Number of the Beast. If they'd kept the same title, who knows, whatever. It's a what if. But to answer the direct question, we were concerned, sad. I still miss him. And that's why I gravitate so strongly to these first 2 records, because it's not a long discography. It's a short period of time. And I embrace it as much as I can. I would have loved to have had more. Now you say at the sacrifice of Number of the Beast. That's a rhetorical question I don't even think I ever need to answer, because one happened, one didn't. And I would have loved for the Killers lineup to keep going.
Yeah. It would be nice to have almost an album in between those 2, Killers and Number of the Beast. But
Something.
we live in this universe, and we got 2 Iron Maiden studio albums. And when I was growing up, we had 2 Iron Maiden studio albums with Paul Di'Anno, and we had Made in Japan, which actually I just want to show off real quick. The price tag on my copy of Made in Japan, $4.
Nice.
This wasn't even bought all that long ago. It was bought sometime in the mid to late 90s. So, before the vinyl resurgence, but that's what we used to pay. That was a reasonable price. That was a great price for Made in Japan back then. And now I was shopping on Discogs, and to get a similar condition copy shipped here on Discogs would run me about $60.
Yeah, right.
There you go. But
Right.
those were my versions of those songs for a long time. Anyway, Johnny Metal. I'm just curious.
I could just
yourself.
quickly touch on something about Paul's. Sorry, I hate to keep
No,
me yapping
go
all
ahead.
the time, but a lot of people, there was rumors going around when Paul departed about it was a drug and an alcohol issue. It was affecting his performance. I honestly don't think that holds much water. I've listened to a lot of bootlegs and performances from the Di'Anno era, and
Sure.
I don't think Di'Anno. Nay, I don't think the band during that era had knew what the concept of an off night was. Like, I haven't heard any evidence of Paul ever sounding anything less than 100%. And to sort of back this up, in 12 Wasted Years, this is an Iron Maiden documentary from 1987. They got Paul back, and when Paul's there, he's just like, it was creative differences. I wanted to do something else. They wanted to do something, and so we parted on that. This is an official Maiden documentary. If they wanted to, they didn't have to bring him back. That's in there because they were happy with that being in there. If they wanted to badmouth him and basically give themselves a mandate to get Bruce in to replace this
Right.
flagging Di'Anno, they could have, but they didn't. And the other thing I think that backs us up is that when Di'Anno left, as I mentioned, he didn't play Maiden. He went and did his own thing. So I honestly believe that there was that creative differences that was a large reason for the split. I don't think it was a performance issue. And as Pete mentioned, Clive as well,
Right.
I don't think Pete mentioned he hadn't heard any evidence of Clive having an off day sort of thing. So, those rumors of drug and alcohol abuse, yes, he may have gotten into the alcohol and that a bit more later in his career. I don't think it was that was the reason why he left.
Right.
No, and in his book, The Beast, Paul Di'Anno says that he left because he wasn't feeling the music anymore as much as he was. He didn't feel like he was on stage giving 110% because he wasn't feeling the music direction. And that's what he said in his book, whether that's revisionist or what have you. That's what he said. There you
I
go.
think history corroborates that, as I
Yeah.
sort of mentioned.
And so does this interview with Steph Honda that I'm going to run in a bit just to hype it up a bit more. Johnny Metal, you have some cool Di'Anno stuff there. When you were growing up, you had the 12-inch singles, didn't you?
Yes, I wish I still had them. Yeah, I wish I still had those. Boy, those are some beauts.
One of the best things about collecting Maiden singles, besides the artwork, was the fact that you knew you were getting some stuff that wasn't on the record.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And I'm curious, did you have any favorites? Women in Uniform has come up in the comments already.
Yeah, I mean, Women in Uniform was always one of my favorites. Yeah,
I
both
love
of those
Burning
are-
Ambition. Off
I do
Burning
too.
Ambition's really good. Invasion is pretty cool. Like I said, I always go back to the live version from the Marquee of Drifter. To me, that's just beautiful. I mean, it's just so raw, so raucous. It's just like Maiden in the middle of a small little pub, and this is what you get hundreds of screaming guys yakking away, but it's just magic. I don't know. I mean, I showed this a few times. They talk about why Paul left, and Paul says his reasoning for leaving. Clive says,
I didn't want to leave.
I didn't want to leave, but they sensed something was something maybe was going on. I don't know, but this is still a pretty good thing. It's an easy thing. Well, I don't know how easy it is, but I know you can find this, and there's good stuff to watch. But gosh, I mean, of the early Di'Anno singles, I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot of them, other than, of course, you had the Twilight Zone there, and so You know, I just remember getting that first album. I had already been listening to Maiden, like Number of the Beast, and I think I may have gotten it before I saw them in concert. And I finally got that first album when I saw them in concert. And boy, it just hooked me. It just hooked me so deeply. So much so that I found myself when I would get Killers. I know, Peter, this is going to probably disappoint you. I probably wind up listening to the first album considerably more than I listened to Killers.
They're very different records.
They are very different records, but for whatever reason, I just gravitate to that first one.
Me too. I love Killers. It blew me away when I first listened to it. But one of the top 5 Maiden albums I'm always reaching for is that debut. It's just got a presence, you know. Every single song, you know, you reach for the debut. It's just like, you know, I want to listen to Di'Anno. Like the debut has that presence. Killers is an amazing album.
I think maybe if I can chime in real fast, is I think one of the things that makes that first album so special is I think it has one of the widest ranges of compositional styles. I mean, it is all over the place, but all within something you could say is relatable, because you didn't get that moving forward very much. You got Children of the Damned, but after that, there was a formula that Maiden used. It was from Harris. You'd have other writers come in the band, but it was still lived in this formula, you know? And you also noticed there's not an overabundant amount of the gallop on these first 2 records. They're not there. It is straight ahead. It is driving 16th notes, which is, again, Clive's forte. It switches on Number of the Beast, and then the gallop becomes the prominent, dominant rhythmic pattern that Maiden uses and is recognized for. So that first record, also, there's something I think special about how unrefined but refined the sound is on it. It's not overproduced. I'm not saying Killers is. Does Killers sound better to my ears? Yes, it does. But there's something about it that, you know, there's this Japanese philosophy, wanasabi or whatever it is. It's called, the beauty is the imperfection in trying to be perfect.
Right.
And that's what is so satisfying about that first record. It's them. It's them. No big producer, no this, no that. It's just them. And everything works from top to bottom.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry,
I want to. No, that's quite all right. I want to give Metal Roger a chance to talk now. Do you want to address Uncle Meat's question here? Bruce was more accessible, both the sound of his voice and his ability to engage an audience and the press. Do you guys agree more or less? I do. I think Bruce has a more, I don't know, engaging personality might not be the word, but certainly he's hosted television programs and whatnot. What do you think, Metal Roger?
I'm just going to quickly say, I think Bruce was a lot easier to hype up because he had that shriek. He had that incredible range. You know, it's like Halford. You can say, you know, oh, come on, go see that band. They've got this amazing singer. Whereas Di'Anno was, you know, as I mentioned, he was a perfectly good singer, you know, and he could scream. But Bruce had that X factor, I think.
That's fair.
Sorry, and I'll toss it back to Metal Roger. Sorry, I haven't been on for like a year.
Yeah, he's got a lot. Yeah. But we will talk about that before we go as well, I promise. But Metal Roger, do you have any thoughts?
Well, Dee Snider said something a long time ago, or
Dee
not
Snider
that
said a lot
long
of
ago.
things.
He said something about frontmen and singers, and he
that was like
and blah blah blah. Anyway, to get to my point, Paul was a singer, Bruce is a frontman. I think they're 2 completely different things, in my opinion. And I think Maiden needed a frontman.
I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah, Steve Harris might have disagreed.
Who could also
early days.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't think that I want to knock I don't think that's a knock on Paul's frontman style, because obviously we did say earlier that whole yo, how he just have the audience in the palm of his hand, you know. So obviously there's certain frontman skills there, but that's in a small club, and then you get into these big, what we call in Canada, we call them hockey barns, but these big arenas. Right. And Bruce Dickinson can fill one of those. He's got a very expressive personality. He was built for those kind of stages, you know, in my opinion. But, you know, there's something to be said. My personal favorite kind of concert going experience is more seeing those small club shows, and seeing a guy like Paul Di'Anno command a stage in one of those clubs must have been a magnificent experience to me. But Bruce was the guy for those big stages, you know, running. Somebody mentioned the acrobatics. It might've been Pete. Somebody mentioned the acrobatics. You know, they didn't have the room for Paul Di'Anno to run very far in those clubs, but Bruce took advantage of all of that stuff. There's pictures of him jumping off risers and all that stuff. So,
well, you know, Uncle Meat also asked as a follow-up to that, Mike, is, you know, he asked if Bruce doesn't come in, and this is where everything really comes to a head, would Maiden have become the international phenomenon they had become,
right,
if he had stayed? To which I say, I don't know.
It's possible. It's possible.
I don't know. There's nothing to prove that they wouldn't have.
What we do know is that they did make those big stages with Bruce, and they made a fantastic job of it, and they played a lot of those Di'Anno era songs.
It's entirely possible Di'Anno still leaves in the event that they don't get in Bruce and they just get in another singer, and you know, then history goes in a completely different direction, because you know, as we sort of touched on already, Di'Anno was leaning that way to leave.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that was the most constant about Maiden during this era was change.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to get to their fifth album before you have a repeat lineup.
Yeah.
So
this
was common with Maiden. They changed members, but they just happened to change what I perceive as the two most challenging. Singers are the most difficult because they're the most unique, and drummers are second because of the individuality, the way drummers play.
Now, don't tell that to Spinal Tap, Pete. I'm glad we didn't have you on our Spinal Tap show, Pete.
Yeah, no offense to 6-string and 4-string players. You're easier to replace than a drummer and a singer. Sorry.
You're not wrong.
Depending.
No.
Even the non-musical player can understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the
I would
first
like
time.
to ask a question that might be out there, but you know, horror punk is always credited to the creation by the Misfits. Why doesn't Iron Maiden have any of that? Because those first two albums, like I said earlier, were really punkish, and they were singing about vampires and killers way before the Misfits did.
If I had
My
to
guess is
answer
because
that-
Maiden talked down about punk all the time, and they hated punk. So I doubt anyone in the punk community wants to give them, props for anything, considering how much they hate the scene.
And it's like they were
Steve Harris.
It's like Paul was the punk guy that they were trying to make a metal guy.
And also, Roger, as an old fogey who lived through that era, there was a segregation of genres that doesn't exist in the same way today. Like metal guys with long hair couldn't listen to punk and vice versa. There were physical rumbles in the streets.
Yeah, no.
Anyway.
I was friends with an old retired, we'll say biker, and he used to tell me stories about punk versus metal and all that.
And it's true.
Forgot about that.
But Paul's look and his sound was enough to embrace. He was enough to embrace that punk fan base, even though it was a lot more proggier metal sound. And then when you have Eddie with his spiked hair and punky look, that also attracted the punk part too. So you had some crossover, even though Steve didn't want anything to do with it. It's just that's how it just worked out, and it was a good combination.
Okay, so listen, I want to play this interview by Steph, or with Steph. It's 4 minutes long. Then I want to read an email that I received from my good friend Thor out in Denmark about Paul Di'Anno, and then we'll go around and get our final thoughts, okay? So let's check out this interview with Steph Hond. He played guitar, I'm not sure exactly what era, with Paul Di'Anno, and we asked him, or rather Harrison asked him, a question. Mr. Harrison Kopp had a question regarding your time playing with Paul Di'Anno. He wants to know if anything was ever recorded live with you and Paul.
There's a lot of videos on YouTube.
Okay.
There's a whole concert on YouTube.
A whole concert?
Yeah. I can send you the link when we're done.
Sure.
The sound is not that great because it's a soundboard, I think. But there's nearly the whole show. There's a lot of things. The thing we didn't rehearse with. Nothing.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
We didn't rehearse with Paul Di'Anno. We just met on stage, basically. That was pretty scary. I mean, with the band, we rehearsed like 5 times only. I mean, Iron Maiden is not that easy because we have to be very sync with the other guitar player. Otherwise, it's just crap. And people who like or love Iron Maiden, they want you to play exactly the same guitar solos, everything. So we had a lot of pressure, and his manager told us that, you know what, Paul Di'Anno is not very easy, can be violent, and so I was like, oh no, and so I had to pick him up at the airport. I was the only one because the other one got scared. So he said, no, go. So I had to go to the airport by myself. I was like, oh, no. And here comes this big guy. He looks like the Godfather. And he was very, very nice to me. With me, he was very nice. But he had some moments where he was kind of scary. When he gets angry, it's like, oh, you don't want to piss him off. And we just... we went in my hometown. It's a very small town, and we did one rehearsal in front of him. He didn't sing anything he wanted us to play. So, and I guess people knew about it. So we were in a rehearsal room, and we heard people walking around, and we saw people with Iron Maiden vinyl. People were looking for him. That was funny, and that's it. And the first time we really played with him was on stage.
Wow. So
it was Ideas of March, something like that, the first song. And Watch Out, that was the song. And we had to come on stage first, and then you start playing, and then here comes Paul Di'Anno, and I spent the whole evening playing on the side of stage like that. I was just looking at him the whole time. It was my Iron Maiden was the first band I've been listening to when I was a teenager. So it was like I'm playing with my hero. So there's videos of that on YouTube. And
the very first show.
I didn't move. I was just looking at him. That's all, and didn't know what to do because I was so impressed.
Did the first show go well then? Like even without a rehearsal?
Yeah. The only thing he wanted us to play faster because we tried to play exactly the same as the songs back in the days,
right?
The same sound, everything, and he likes everything to be played very, very fast, which is not a good thing. So, but you can't say no to him. I'll say, okay, we're going to play faster, but because he's a punk guy, it's punk. So yeah. The Ramones, Sex Pistols, and I don't think he likes Iron Maiden.
No. I don't think he likes Iron Maiden. There was a second interview that I'm not going to run for time reasons, where he mentions that he was trying to encourage Paul to go back to his punk roots and make something a little bit more like that first Iron Maiden album, but that Paul was seemingly going to do this metal thing and so on and so forth.
Yeah, for a punk guy, he never really touched punk again after he left Maiden. You know, it's all like heavy metal, and then that Di'Anno self-titled. I mean, he was obviously forced down that road, but it's like
Yeah.
It would have been
I
interesting.
want to read.
Sorry.
I want to read this email that I received from Thor, and then we'll go around and say our final words for Paul Di'Anno tonight. But this is what Thor sent me earlier.
Last name.
You want Thor?
Yeah.
I know he goes by the name of Thor Blackmore on social media, but I mean, just having the first name of Thor.
If we have a son, his name will be Thor.
I'm just proud that I know a friend named Thor, and he's from Denmark, and this is what he had to say. Rest in peace, Paul Di'Anno. The first thing I think of when Di'Anno is mentioned is Strange World. I can't recall a time when I haven't been an Iron Maiden fan. Even at an early age, the Rock in Rio concert of 2001, Eddie, my dad's CDs, I lashed onto all of it as if it wasn't anything that I'd ever seen before. Most of it was Dickinson era Maiden. My father only owned the debut and Killers on vinyl, and he wasn't really trusting me with his vinyl for good reasons. The only thing on CD was Best of the Beast, Maiden's first compilation, which only had a live version of Running Free with Bruce singing on it. So I knew nothing of Di'Anno until the internet brought more exposure of his work to me. And I think he's talking about the single CD, Best of the Beast.
Yeah, for sure.
But I remember one night when I was sitting with my dad at his computer and he played this. And then he does a little cue Soundhouse Tapes, Strange World. This was a side of Maiden that was very new to me. A slow, melancholic, but melodic ballad. And this was definitely not Bruce singing. There was also a roughness to it, and to my surprise, it was not on Best of the Beast. It was on Best of the Beast, but not ours. As I would later learn, it was an older version of Strange World from the famous Soundhouse Tape sessions, where Maiden would cut their first independent EP. The song in question was left out of the EP, but later released in a 2-disc edition of Best of the Beast. We only had the single disc version, so my dad got the MP3 file somewhere off the web. The early days of the internet, which I will also tip my hat to. Soon after, I would learn a lot more about Paul Di'Anno, the man before Bruce Dickinson, a man with an edge of punk and a hint of blues to his voice and name. Former punk rocker who joined Maiden in 77 and did the business till 81. His presence in the first 2 Maiden records helped elevate the band above the others. I was mesmerized by the speed-laden.
Done wrapping up.
Thanks, Liz. I was mesmerized by the speed-laden Phantom of the Opera or the atmospheric Remember Tomorrow. So distant from their latter years to the point that it could never be replicated today. And Di'Anno's rough, raspy baritone voice gave all the more character to the songs that not even Bruce could do justice. When I finally got around to listening to Killers, an album that was more of a deep cut for most Maiden fans, not Pete, I was even more delighted. More speed, better production in some cases, more fleshed out songs, and Di'Anno in full-on attack mode while broadening his voice with some falsetto screams like on Purgatory. I know the ones he's talking about. Sadly, the Maiden partnership wasn't to last, and Di'Anno and the gang split in 81. While Maiden held on and rose to the top, Di'Anno was struggling, going from band to band, starting new projects only for it to dissolve before getting any momentum. The man had only Maiden to his credibility and nothing else, while also having demons of his own with sex, booze, and drugs. But he kept trying and always played cool to the fans. That is true. He was well known for being so friendly to the fans. In later years, he was confined to a wheelchair and ended up having a nasty leg infection, which nearly costed his leg. Afterwards, he was left alone with too many medical bills, and the National Health Service didn't care too much to help him. But Maiden fans worldwide didn't forget, setting up crowdfunding campaigns to raise money and help the man get back on his track. Even Maiden noticed and helped finance his medical treatments in Croatia, where the former singer located too. In his new band Warhorse released 2 albums this year and he got to meet up with Steve Harris, Rod Smallwood, and Bruce Dickinson. As I write this, Strange World plays in the background, reminding me of that time, reminding me of the somber tone, reminding me of Di'Anno. Godspeed, Paul, from Thor. And I really appreciate that mentioning of that demo version of Strange World from the Soundhouse Tape outtakes. Oh my God, so good. Good opportunity for me to show off my bootleg of Soundhouse Tapes. And then we'll wrap up. But this is a bootleg of Soundhouse Tapes and more. So it has Soundhouse Tapes and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And it's an actual silver CD. It's not a burned one. For me, this is probably the only physical copy of Soundhouse Tapes that I will ever own. Having said that, I believe that we have paid pretty good tribute to Paul Di'Anno tonight. Harrison, again, thank you so much for that really solid run through your collection. I'm really impressed. I didn't know you had that much. Let's each go around and say whatever else you have to say about Paul Di'Anno. Starting with you, Mr. Harrison.
All right, so I'm probably just going to touch on like one or two things that I sort of missed in my previous round. This one's in sort of addressing Pete. You know how, Steph Hond, not Pete, sorry. You know how Steph Hond said that Paul wanted to play fast, and the funny thing is that when Maiden played live, they played really fast. Particularly on this album. If you listen to Phantom of the Opera, it is played at breakneck speed, like almost inhuman speed. You can sort of see where Adrian was coming from, when he's like, we were squeezing the life out of the songs, because Phantom of the Opera at breakneck speed is something to behold. The other thing I sort of wanted to touch on is more of a historical thing, but when Paul, sort of like at the turn of the century, which sort of like coincided with that downward slide. One of the other things, Paul stopped being like having like a solo band. He was just basically Paul himself, and he'd basically get local bands wherever he was touring to support him. Usually it would actually be the support act that was touring that would then come out again to be his band. So sort of Steph touched on that, how they didn't rehearse with Di'Anno, that sort of thing. It was probably economics why he did that. And so the very last thing I'm going to touch on is something really cool. You can find this on YouTube. Paul toured Australia a couple times. One time he did a joint headline tour with Blaze Bayley. And then in about 2014, I think this was a solo appearance without Blaze, he brought Paul Mario Day on stage, because Paul Mario Day lives here. He relocated here after about 86 when he toured here with The Sweet, because he was singing in The Sweet at the time. I actually have that album here, Sweet Live at the Marquee, 1986. He toured Australia, fell in love with the Australian tour manager, relocated here. So Paul Di'Anno actually brought Paul Mario Day on stage to sing a duet with him on Running Free. This is on YouTube, and I think it's phenomenal. I think Paul Mario Day, even at this aged age, sounds great. When you listen to this album, when you listen to his performance of Running Free, you can absolutely hear why he was in the band. As Steve said, or someone else in the band said, he had the voice, he just didn't have the stage presence. His stage presence has improved a bit. But he absolutely had the voice. So I thought it was really cool of Paul to bring out Paul Mario Day for that appearance. And so I've sort of, I've said a lot of things, but the one thing that I want to say about Paul Di'Anno is, even though he might not have always been 100% in the later years, when he gave 100%, he gave 200%. He was, there to the max, up to 11 basically.
Awesome. And I just want to, just for anybody who doesn't know, Paul Mario Day is the original Iron Maiden lead singer. So they went from the guy with no stage presence to Dennis Wilcock, who was basically all stage presence, to Paul Di'Anno
off the stage.
And to Paul Di'Anno, who was the perfect balance. Pete Jones, thanks again for joining me tonight. Very impromptu. Any last words that you want to say about Paul Di'Anno?
Well, again, thank you for having me. I think I'm grateful for a number of things. And the one I want to specifically touch on is that when bands have members leave, sometimes the degree of civility can be very questionable. We have seen these ongoing feuds with ex-members and how my era is better than yours, you're not this, I'm that, blah, 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 whatever. Other than maybe just an occasional snipe, Bruce not too long ago called the first album a bag of shite. But, we'll take that with a grain of salt. The civility that has gone on between Clive until his passing and Paul up now until his, at least wildly publicly, has been cordial, respectful, and honoring of the legacy of the entire band. Because I think it is detrimental to the success of a group to slam an early era Obviously, we remember the constant battles between Ozzy and Dio. They're ugly, they're harsh, and they ruin a fan's experience. That didn't happen here. And I'm very grateful for that we can think about the various eras and have our preferences. That's great. I have no problem with people's, feelings about what eras and albums and things they love. But we all still seem to kind of wrap ourselves in the Up the Irons Maiden banner and get along. And that isn't true of a lot of bands. So these albums are just unmeasurably important to me. I am a massive fan of the Bruce era as well. Love this band. But there is something special. Paul was an integral part of that. And now he and Clive can go play together. And I'm waiting for a little bit of rumbling in the sky because I know it'll be them. And I'm just really glad that I was there from the very, very beginning and was able to experience it in real time. The ups, the downs, the changes, the anticipations, the fears, the discoveries, and the joys that went along with it. So rest well, Paul.
Well said.
Yeah.
Johnny Metal. What say you?
Again, watching this, it just, one thing that always has come to my mind is what Peter just touched on. It's like all those old members. I mean, let's face it. Who knows the name Terry Rance? Who knows the name Terry Wappram? Okay.
I do.
Tony Moore. Let's see. Okay, Tony Parsons.
Right.
Barry Purkis, better known as
Dan
Thunderstick.
Wilcox, Paul Murray.
Thunderstick.
Okay, so you have all these people. They all went through the Maiden family tree, and yeah, they still seem to be a big family because because of this. I mean, because of this.
Yeah.
This is a Cart and Horses CD they did around 2020. And every song on this CD features a previous member of Iron Maiden. Even Paul Di'Anno, they took a song from Battle Zone. It was a song called "The Land God Gave to Cain." So that's featured on this. So there's a lot of just good stuff that the band members, these past members, have done. Now, what's the one name that's glaringly missing from all of this? Dennis Wilcock. Nobody wants anything to do with him, apparently, and good reason. I mean, he seemed like he was not a good person to deal with. And he tried to sue the band some years ago. They were like, he couldn't remember the lyrics back then. How does he know the lyrics now? But that's another story. But Paul and all those old members of Maiden, there's a family there that you don't see with a lot of bands. And that to me is a very, very cool thing to see. You're not going to see Vinnie Vincent, Bruce Kulick, and Ace Frehley getting together with Tommy Thayer and all jamming out at the same time. It's just, if so, it's going to be Jesus is going to come back first. But the thing is, you get these guys together and it's just a family. And that's what I get from that Maiden thing. The loss of Paul. I think I've heard a lot of people say this for those of us who are of age when we knew when these albums came out. This is a part of our childhood that's gone. And I said this to Peter, I think in a private message, one by one, our heroes are just going to keep going.
Yeah.
And these next 10, 15 years, maybe less, are probably going to get really depressing for some of us old timers who are seeing our heroes fade away. So Paul Di'Anno, wherever you are, my friend, thank you for those. Thank you for what you gave to Iron Maiden, and just thank you for what you gave to the world. And I'm sorry that you had to deal with what you had to deal with in the last 10 years of your life with your health issues.
Well said, Johnny Metal. Metal Roger, you are going to see Iron Maiden tomorrow night. Have a wonderful night. I can't wait to hear all about it. What are your final thoughts about Paul Di'Anno?
Yeah, I did this when Lemmy died, so take a swig for the phone.
I didn't know they made that. Jack and Coke. There you go.
It's called Lemmy now.
There you go. So that's for Paul.
You know, I despite what you said at the beginning, how I'm the newest fan, there's 3 bands that I can't remember a time that I haven't listened to them. That's AC/DC, Metallica, and Iron Maiden. So kind of feels like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I've yet to see Iron Maiden live, which
that's changing in 24 hours.
yeah. I've done a lot of cool stuff, but I think that's gonna be
awesome.
Gonna be Iron Maiden, then my wedding.
Yeah, that's correct.
And then
that's
Metallica,
correct.
I'm gonna go get dinner.
I might have to let you go.
We love
Roger,
you, Liz.
I already
you
said
need to
that
go.
'cause Liz is here. I obviously.
Yeah, but you might be in shit now.
They're all tied.
Excellent.
Anyway, everyone said everything I could think of. Really, there's nothing else to say other than thank you. It's really shitty when, like, I'm not as old as you guys, but
Wow.
Hey,
There it is.
I mean that in a
There it
nice
is.
way.
I'm not old.
Well, you're probably younger than me.
Oh, for sure.
Anyway, as I was trying to say,
Damn, Harrison.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to feel old, I'm as old as Iron Maiden's Reunion era, which is now half their career.
Well, I feel old now.
Sorry.
It's all right.
I have T-shirts that's older than Harrison.
I have CDs that are older than me, a lot of them.
Probably wondering where the CD is.
But anyway, regardless, Roger,
Thank you, Roger.
I can't wait to hear all about Maiden tomorrow night. And well said. As for myself, I
was actually going to say one more thing, though.
Yeah, please.
This is the least amount of talking I've done in many years, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you, you two.
Well, these guys are easy to listen to. Let's face it.
Yeah. The amount of talking I block out from Liz is.
We're gonna witness a murder.
I do like that we have some comedy here at the end.
Yeah.
Yes.
We could change this photo a little more easily there, sir.
Oh, we could. Actually, Harrison, can you put Roger's head on there and we'll send that to Liz?
Anyway, as I was trying to say until my wife threw my hat at me, it was a joy listening to you, Pete and Harrison.
And not John. Anyways, thank you, Roger. As for myself, I just want to start with a little anecdote. Earlier this week, I've been listening to a lot of Van Halen lately, and earlier this week I had a conversation at work about Eddie Van Halen and how I was in a really bad mood the day that Eddie Van Halen died. You know, I came home from work and I was kind of like snippy with my wife, and there's the book. And, you know, a lot of that was to do with the fact that I was mourning Eddie Van Halen, right? And this guy at work goes, "Well, why were you mourning Eddie Van Halen?" And I'm like, "Because he's been in my heart. He's been in my soul for 40 years of my life." Well, that's dumb. And so when I sit here and I think about Paul Di'Anno, who has also been in my life for 40 years, roughly, in my soul, since the first time I heard Women in Uniform, likely, either that or the Made in Japan EP, I'm allowed to mourn that, you know? I'm allowed to feel sad. And I do, because how many times did I sit in my bedroom as a teenager with the Iron Maiden album playing whatever was bugging me, whether it be kids at school picking on me or whatever. Didn't that album make me feel great? Didn't that album make me feel strong? And didn't that album make me feel like those kids couldn't touch me? Yes, all of that stuff. And so much of that has to do with Paul Di'Anno. You know, he is in here. He is in my heart. He's in all of your hearts. All of these songs that he sang on, co-wrote, whatever. I mean, when I was growing up, the first metal band, quote unquote metal band that I liked, not including Quiet Riot, was Wasp. The second was Iron Maiden. And it was like this. Here's Wasp, Iron Maiden's coming, and then it was like that, you know. Iron Maiden were my favorite band, and I collected all the buttons. And there were buttons for album art, or so I should really say single art, that I'd never seen before in real life, like the Purgatory button with the half devil, half Eddie face, which is one of the coolest pieces of Derek Riggs art, and I think the first real inkling of what Derek Riggs was going to be able to do. We're like, what is that? We didn't know any of those Paul Di'Anno B-sides at the time. And these records were out of print by the time we were getting into Iron Maiden, but we were learning, and I had a real gravitation, especially to that first Iron Maiden album, which a lot of people, for some reason, trash. But I want to make a happy announcement today that Harrison's going to be so thrilled about, which is I've spent the entire week listening to Iron Maiden. And man, I love Killers now. Harrison knows I used to rank Killers. Harrison knows I used to rank Killers as my second least favorite, with No Prayer for the Dying at the very bottom. But man, Killers is clicking with me, dude. I listened to it like twice again today, and songs like Purgatory and Prodigal Son are finally speaking to me. Everything is speaking to me, man. Everything.
Can I make you jealous, by the way?
Yeah.
Iron Maiden tomorrow, 2 weeks Wasp.
Oh, that's awesome.
And in between that, King Diamond.
Well, that's awesome. Good for you, my friend. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Paul Di'Anno has been in my soul since childhood, and I am allowed to feel sad. To the guy at work, you're wrong. I think everybody in the panel agrees. Anyway, that's it. That's a wrap. I think Paul would be happy with what we had to say tonight. Look at that. Thank you, Johnny. I always like to go around and talk about what we have coming up. In this case, I just next week we have a very special show. It was supposed to be Harrison's return next week, but unfortunately he had to come in early this week. Mm-hmm. But Harrison, you have been away since basically January of this year. This is your first show back. Yeah. Late Feb, okay.
Sorry,
but next,
for me, these dates are like seared into my brain, sort of thing.
I imagine so. I have missed you, my friend. I'm so happy to have you back. But next week is your real official return. We are doing Harrison's comeback special. We are doing whatever the heck Harrison wants to do. What can you tell us about what's happening next week on Grab a Stag of Rock?
Well, it's the 2-year anniversary, so we're doing a throwback to the early days, just showing off whatever we have around. I've got a lot of things. My 3 rounds, I'll give you a preview of the sort of the theme. The first round will be new stuff that I've gotten into. The second round will be bootlegs, because I've picked up a lot of cool bootlegs. And the third round will be like grail items and things that I've had my eye on for a long time. And then after that, we'll be doing ranking the Mad Max films.
Yes, the following week with Peter Kirk. That is November the 7th, 8th, whatever that. I think it's the 8th.
Yeah, I think so.
Look, that's I have props.
There it is. Mm-hmm. We're going to be doing the Mad Max films, all 5. Do I have that right? Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to be breaking the rules, though. I'm not talking about Thunderdome.
What?
Okay. Hey, Harrison's allowed. He's always been the rule breaker of this show. Okay, cool.
He's the Catino here.
Yes. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to the next few weeks with you, Harrison. Stay tuned. Mr. Jones, you're always up to something. Can you tell us anything that you've got coming out on YouTube or anywhere else in the near future?
Oh yeah, I'm was part of Mr. Metals, Accept series, Up to the Limit, and my episode on Restless and Wild is out there. I just did, and I'm so excited for him. I did my 3rd episode with Tom Krulis on his Krulis Mania, where we did Made in Japan versus Made in Europe. And this is not even shameless plug. This is like big plug because I'm kind of proud of it. It's busting the numbers. It is exploding to a level of which both of us are completely astonished. I'm not taking any credit. It's his channel. But I'm so excited for him because this is a really strong feather and I'm hoping that it just really elevates his channel moving forward. So I'm super proud of that. I've always got something coming out with Mr. Kerr. We just did our favorite and least favorite rainbow. We've done a Deep Purple Mark II before that. So we've always got something going on in the Deep Purple series over there. I've got contrarian stuff that has come out, and so I stay busy, but to acknowledge by the grace and thanks, because I'm a wandering minstrel. People ask me, I'm not sure why, but they do. They ask me to come join them, and I just it's about their channel. I just try and do as much as I can to help them grow and help and just be a part of the system. So I'm always got something going on. So,
well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Again, short notice, like I contacted you like 4 hours ago.
Something like
so,
that, yeah.
But so thank you. And Johnny Metal, I know you are in the midst of Accept. You just did Eat the Heat this week, which I'm going to be watching tomorrow.
Yep.
Continuing next week with the first new Udo reunion album. There we go. And you've got tons of stuff. You got tons of pokers in the oven.
Yeah.
We're both going to be on the Contrarians again next Wednesday.
Yep.
And what else you got cooking?
Well, I've been getting the random here of doing just something random video wise. So sometimes I'll post something there, but just to go back to Peter and his numbers, I was actually looking at the view counts on the Accept series, and right now his is in the lead. His has more views than even the first episode that had Martin Popoff on it. So that's saying something. So but yeah, so that's a good thing. So yeah, when Peter's on, people listen, and I think that's a strong testament to him. So because he definitely has some it's a master class when you're listening to Peter. But anyway, no, as far as anything else I've got, just random stuff that if I'm on Grants, Contrarians, and then just focusing on the Accept series and just kind of take it from there. And, I know Roger wants to do something with the Carsons, but it seems like Ben and Jason have kind of gone in different directions in their lives and so forth. So
they're making crappy country music.
Yeah. So it's so getting them to get together has been a little bit challenging, but hopefully one day we can get that back together too. But right now just taking one day at a time.
And also thank you for co-hosting here for basically the last month. Some of those episodes were very impromptu as well, but we had some good times when we did Spinal Tap and when we did A Mighty Wind. My goodness, those were some great shows.
Mm-hmm.
And Metal Roger, I am sure we will have you back to talk about Iron Maiden again in 2025. We are doing an Iron Maiden series in 2025, Harrison and I. Pete has already agreed to come on board. We have Peter Kerr, we have Martin Popoff, and just today Melissa Nee jumped on board. So I'm sure we'll have you back. And if you have anything else to say, and we'll head home.
Well, when anyone needs comic relief, here I am. And well, I think I'm going to do a strongman competition next year because I saw my friend pull a fucking truck last weekend. So I'm like, maybe
first F-bomb of the show, folks. There it is. First F. Thank God it's at the end.
Eat your heart out, Jax. There you go.
There you go. There's a
And-
gun show.
And I just want to say, I love that he's representing a band called Iron Mullet.
That's also great.
And I'd
we didn't-
also like to say I said crappy country music because that's
Yeah.
Liz's favorite genre.
I know
So
you did that on
dig at
purpose.
her.
I know you did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you,
we're gonna need
everyone.
to turn her into metalhead one day.
Not doing
And
that.
That's on
remember,
you.
I gave you a good idea for a show too.
Oh, I
You
know.
should
We're gonna
tell
do it.
Harrison.
We'll just keep it. We don't want anybody stealing the ideas. Anyway,
Because they do.
My ideas.
Yeah.
I'm chaos.
Are you
Anyway,
ready?
guys,
Great.
Roger has to go.
Bye.
So, anyways, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for watching. We always like to go out in song, and this is a song going back to a little bit later than the Diano era of Iron Maiden by a few years. This is a Toronto band that I'm going to be writing about.
I was going
This
to
is-
sing Jurassic Park is frightening in the
Here,
dark.
I have a mute button. Here we go. There we go. This is a band that I'm going to be writing about on my website, mikeladeno.com. You can see the name right there. There's a band from Toronto called Hateful Snake. A song called Are You Ready? Hope you enjoy. Have a great night and a great weekend. Rest in peace, Paul Diano. Here's some Hateful Snake for you. Night, everybody.
It's 420 with John Major. And by the way, we have all of our winners for the Supergirl contest for today. By the way, are the Boyce brothers on holidays? Anyway, our Toronto Rocks Power Pack Triple Play continues. This is Hateful Snake, and are you ready on Toronto Rocks?
It's